girls. This video is to revise with you what we have taken so far in Unit 1 in the journalism class. Now, let me remind you that Unit 1 is an introduction to journalism, so it's just an introduction to the history of American journalism. We have the lessons here, the introduction, where you find the objectives, lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we have the critical thinking questions. So let's go to the introduction, which is very important because of this part, which is listing the objectives that you need to achieve by the end of this unit. Now, it's very important to know these objectives from the beginning and to measure if you have achieved the objectives or no. So objective number 1 was to or is to identify the major historical trends. There are major historical trends in each and every lesson that you are going to identify from the end of the 19th century into the 21st century. Then number 2, you need to recognize the connection between the changes in journalism and the introduction of new technology, how it started and what happened because of the technology. Number 3, you need to understand the key events in American history that reflected the change or that reflect the changes that happened in journalism. Finally, you need to recognize major figures, famous journalists that affected American journalism and their contributions to the American journalism during that period of time. One more time, it's very important to be aware of those objectives. So by the end of the unit, you are able to identify, recognize, understand, and also recognize these parts. Let me take you to lesson 1, which is usually a very short lesson in all the units because it's an introduction to the unit. It's about, of course, the American journalism. It's just mainly taking you from this idea of journalism as having reporters with notebooks or microphones and cameras to what we have now of people having applications or having smartphones in order to deliver information. Before we start, let me remind you that journalism here is the act of transforming information. So with any way you might transform information or spread awareness using a printed piece of paper, a paragraph. You might do that through an audio, through a video. And here we have some of the major trends that happened in journalism. So we can say that during that period of time, printed journalism and newspapers appeared, and then we have the wars before different or between different newspapers. Then during the 1920s to the 1940s, we have radio broadcasting and fireside chats. 50 to 70s, we have the TV broadcasting. And then nowadays, we have the 24-hour news cycle and the CNN growing. It's very important to know that the history of journalism has moved from newspaper wars to the blogosphere and the social media that we are having nowadays. Through the lessons, you are going to be able to identify those changes and know more about them. Let's start with lesson 2. It's mainly about yellow and gray journalism. So we're talking about the beginning. Printed journalism appeared, and now different newspapers appeared, and then we have something that is known as the newspaper wars. Why? Because we have here competition between big newspapers in order to gain money. And we have here two famous people called William Randolph and Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. And who are they? They are two important figures in journalism. Why? Because they were rivals, enemies, and they were both committed to the trend of new journalism called yellow journalism. What is yellow journalism? It's very important to identify yellow journalism. Yellow journalism focus more on providing entertaining stories rather than factual information. So it's depending more on entertainment. The source of the information or one piece of information might be true, then it's the journalist's jobs to add entertaining stories that would come up from this idea or source. One more time, this was a new trend during that period of time, and it appeared during the Spanish American War. And one of the most famous quotes that would represent yellow journalism was, "You furnish the picture, and I will furnish, or I'll furnish the war." So we might have a picture and that's real, but I'll make up a story out of it. Then we have the age of muckrakers. Who are the muckrakers? The muckrakers are journalists who decided to investigate and reform societies. Okay, so the term muckraker or investigative reformist journalist was created by President Theodore Roosevelt in the speech of 1906. Through the term was not necessarily negative. Muckrakers don't have to be a negative term. It's a term around people who criticize and who would discover or uncover mysterious things happening during that period of time. It's very important to know about Sinclair's case, and Sinclair was one of the famous muckrakers. He wrote a very famous novel, and what does this novel or what did the novel do? Now, because of this novel, you will find out here Sinclair exposed the disgusting working conditions, the unfair wages, and the shady business practices, and the lack of sanitation in the factory meat companies during that period of time. So he exposed what was happening in those places, which caused a lot of reformation and change. And that happened because of the public reaction after reading this novel. So, after reading the novel, the general public was horrified by Sinclair's description of the conditions in the meatpacking company. And we have here the president responding to this novel by doing what? By creating a commission to investigate the conditions in the meatpacking plants, which led to the passage of massive reforms in both food and drugs regulations. And the government oversight, we know, consider normal came about because of uptown Sinclair's efforts. So what we have now, and we consider it normal, like checking the conditions and making sure that everything is clean, where once something not happening, and it happened because of the Sinclair's case. Then we move to another kind of journalism, which is called the traditional journalism or the gray journalism. And we have the old gray lady that's famous of this kind of journalism. Okay, so it's a New York newspaper, and those people, the journalists there, were known as being objective, delivering the information without adding any sensation to it. And here we can say that also the Times ran lists of some of the information that reflected or that were of concern to the society, and like reflecting what was really happening in an objective way. Here, read all about it, the power of new journalism style. Of course, because of journalism, newspapers and magazines were how Americans learned about what was happening in the world, and the relationship between the public and the press was changing during the early years of the 20th century. So, by that time, everybody would know where to get the information from, which newspaper would deliver the information objectively, and which newspaper would add sensational stories in order to raise their selling income. Now, here we have also a case of the positive power of the press. During those periods of time back then, it was not easy for people to know what was happening in different places. So, for the first time, people would know about floods, about earthquakes, and this caused a lot of empathy. People started helping each other, maybe sending uh, donations because of journalism. For the first time, we have something called first person reporting, and we have the soap sisters who could put emotions into almost anything they covered. They used to report, they used to cover incidents and accidents that were happening during that period of time. They used to criticize what was happening, so they were mainly critique, and they recognized the power of emotions in delivering information, and so on. Then we have lesson 3 about the first broadcast and radio as the second generation of American journalism. So we can consider print journalism as the first generation of journalism, and now here we have the invention of the radio, and people now started to find information through the radio, and we have something called news reels or films featuring new items which were played before the feature, and then from there developed all the motion picture started to develop. And because of the video, because of the radio, people were introduced to new styles of journalism, and we have the CBS style, which was a fair, balanced, and objective approach to reporting that led most Americans to trust the network and the reporters who brought them the stories. We have now something appearing called the FCC says no to broadcast monopolies. Now, with the invention of the radio, now we're having many broadcasting. We have the newspapers. We have a lot of information going on. In order to make sure that what's said is regulated, the government had a Federal Communication Act, and they created something called Federal Communication Commission. It's a new government agency that had the task of regulating the air waves. So they're under control now. And then, because of the radio, printed journalism had to survive during that period of time. So we have the magazines appearing, innovating new ideas, spreading new information, specialized in specific topics about life, about fortune, about sports, about cars. And then we have photo documentarian journalism, in which they started adding photos to newspapers and also magazines as a kind of delivering and spreading information. Then we have lesson 4, mainly about the age of television. So that's a new trend that's appearing during that period of time. So the age of television appeared during that period of time, and by the end of 1940s, TV was almost in every house in America, and then networks began investigating into television development, and television was everywhere. People gathered in order to watch what was happening all around the world, and for the first time, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth was demonstrated or shown to places that were never able to see those kinds of events. Now, print journalism's response to broadcasting one more time, newspapers and magazines are trying to survive with the appearance of radio and TV. So they started to add more entertaining information or other attractive information for the people. And for the first time, we have Margaret Higgins, the first war correspondent, the first lady to report what was happening in the war. Then we have here the relationship between journalism and politics. Because of journalism, because of the TV, for the first time, Americans were able to attend live debates between presidential candidates and to be able to choose and elect the one they would trust after having, of course, a debate or presenting their programs or what developments or achievements they would like to go through and achieve if they're presidents. Now we have now an intimate relationship between the Americans and TV, and we have Walter Cronkite, one of the most respected TV newscaster in American history, and a lot of people were just waiting for him to know about what was happening all around. Then one more time, the magazines appearing and trying to develop and add more news and information. And we have something called also the television news magazines, later developed into the narrowcasting or the channel or the broadcasting or the channels that are specified in one kind of information. Here, lesson 5, it's about printed journalism, making history, and those are two famous cases or accidents that happened that showed the power of the press and the power of printed journalism: the Pentagon Papers and the Watergate. And those were two major investigative reports in the early 1970s, and they made major impact on the political landscape of the United States. They demonstrated the power of the press to affect government policies and politics. So what was happening? So we have 3,000 page Pentagon report on the Vietnam Wars being leaked by a military employee who was by then opposed to the war. And of course, this caused tremendous uproar in the American society. And that caused the discovery of the previous administration that misled the public about the US involvement in the war, that which made the Americans feel that they were betrayed. They thought that they're participating in the war for reasons, but it turned out, or it was exposed to be false reasons or false reasons, and there are other reasons for this involvement. And we have here President Nixon trying to stop the leak of the Pentagon Papers, but he was not able to do that. And the papers made anti-war sentiment stronger among many Americans, creating more pressure to bring back the troops and the soldiers who were in the war. And that really happened. They brought back almost all the Americans who were sent to the war during that period of time. And after the Pentagon Papers died down, we have another Watergate office, Watergate scandal, and the Watergate office building became one of the most important investigations in the American history. So what happened during that period of time? We have Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein reporting with the Washington Post, quote, a rumor that the break-in that happened was tied to the commitment of the re-elect of the president. So which means that the breaking happened because they wanted maybe to take some paper or make sure that to hide some information in order, or that has a relationship to the elections of the president. So they pursued this story step by step, connecting the cover up the cover up to the president himself. So they found out that the president himself was like involved in this robbery or uh, uh, accident or incident. And they used, of course, an anonymous source named Deep Throat in order to be in order not to be known. And because of this investigation, hearing to consider the impeachment or the process of bringing formal charges against a member of the executive branch and potentially removing them from office. So President Nixon was actually forced to resign in August and he was not re-elected. And one more time, who was the Deep Throat? Those were Woodward and Bernstein's Watergate information, and those were the two journalists who investigated what happened, and they tracked what happened in the Watergate office robbery to the president himself. Then here we come to the last lesson in Unit 1, and I hope I would have just give you a full idea of the lessons and revised it for your quiz. Now we have here, after the television, we have the internet, and we have more of 24 news cycle, and we have Ted Turner on the CNN. And of course you've heard of the CNN that created a world of journalism that we now know. Now we have something called narrowcasting, and what does it mean? It's when we have a special channel to address the needs of whatever market it was serving. So one channel for sports, one channel for the news, one channel for fashion, one channel for anything that the people would just know about. And then we have here the extended 24-hour news cycle. Now people have access to information during the 24-hour. Now muckrakers and new journalism just survived, and till now we have still the sensational nature of tabloid journalism, and we have here the paparazzi. And who are the paparazzi? A community of photographers looking for pictures and videos of celebrities and famous figures to sell to various news and entertainment press outlet. And we have very famous accidents happening because of the paparazzi. We have the death of Diana, that caused a lot of turbulence during that period of time, and a lot of people mentioned that the paparazzi was the reason behind her death, because they only cared about taking photographs for her, and that she right before the accident was chased by some paparazzi, and she was asking them to stop, but they didn't. And then we here have another also incident, which is called the drug report and the president. It was about something was happening in the White House related to the president. And from there we have the internet age appearing, and we have the blogosphere, which we know now everywhere, the blogs and the bloggers. And it's a network of web blogs written by known and unknown sources. So we have a lot of people spreading information. We might know those people, or they might be undercovered or using other names. And we are going to discuss whether a blogosphere is a trustworthy source of information or no. And nowadays we have the printed in the digital age. So we still have newspapers and magazines, but they are online because of the internet and because of the technology that we are having now. So they would have online newspapers and magazines and broadcasts in order to survive till now. Then we have some questions here to check your comprehension and understanding of the story of the American journalism that we have just shared, that I have just shared with you. So that was Unit 1, the history of American journalism. And I tried my best to discuss the most important parts in the lessons. Thank you so much and wish you all the best.